The converted man here. So Steven Crowder committing logical fallacies left and right and up and down. Apparently, this isn't the first time he's done this, but for whatever reason, it's now a thing that people are talking about. So I'll talk a little bit about it. I do watch Steven from time to time. I don't agree with a lot of what he says. I like that he's trying to, or at least playing at trying to get debates to happen on campuses. So that's something decent. That's something good. Although I disagree with the sign that he has, uh, prove me wrong. It's like that's not, or that's not how that works. You've got the burden of proof there. So or change my mind. He doesn't say prove me wrong, but change my mind. Well, really, it shouldn't be that. It should be let's, I don't know what you would call it, but say let's debate or something. But at any rate, so he had done this hoax thing about the AIDS epidemic, but of course wasn't a hoax. The AIDS thing was a very real thing that really did affect a whole lot of people, and he overly goes hyperbolic on it to finding questionable data to support his basically non-argument. And there's a number of fallacies, but the one that I really targeted as being, I think, the prime is actually not a uh, true logical fallacy in the sense that you won't find it in a textbook, but it is one that I think meets the qualifications of a logical fallacy, and it's the Michael Jordan fallacy. And with that one, basically you say that the person is not, all the good that they could be because they could have used their talent to do something else and done lots of good. So in this case, it's kind of a version of the Michael Jordan fallacy where the United States funded all this research on AIDS and HIV, and they could have done something else. And that if they had done that, then that would have prevented other things or helped other things. And the problem is you don't know that that's the case, and you're basically saying, well, your money should have been spent on this or that. And there's lots of money being spent on many different things. The thing with the AIDS was the reason why so much was spent on it was because it was an epidemic, because it took the world by surprise. Nobody was expecting it. There wasn't a lot known about it. There wasn't a lot of information about it. It wasn't public knowledge. So to get the information out there requires the government to step in and say, hey, look, this is what's going on, and we're going to do something about it. And people were afraid. I remember growing up during this time, people didn't know if you could sit on the same toilet seat as somebody else. There were just all sorts of insane ideas about what AIDS was or what HIV was. And it's like, well, it's only by doing drugs or, it's, don't, whatever it is. And it wasn't, there was some truth to some of it, but not truth to other of it. So absolutely what Stephen said is just, well, it's an outright lie. It's not true that the AIDS epidemic was something that didn't happen and that didn't need money. It did happen, and it did need money because the research had to be funded so that it would accelerate to respond to the crisis. And whether or not that money got used wisely, who knows? But at least it was allocated for that reason, and the government, did their job in doing that. So the multiple logical fallacies that Crowder has by making this quote argument quote, because it's not an argument, is rather unusual, because you would think that they would research that better. You would think that they would really put some thought into potential backlash or whatever. And it does seem like a I want to go and prove my pet theory to be true sort of research rather than actual data and, you know, scientific endeavor. And so that's, rather unfortunate because, it just makes him look bad. And, well, okay, he did this a year ago and he's doing it again. So the data is incorrect. The argument about the funding, that's a fallacy, because you say, oh, what if the government put it all on cancer research? Okay, what if that happened? Because the cancer research already gets a lot of money, but okay, so no AIDS at all, was got zero funding from the government, but cancer got a whole lot more money. Okay, well, we wouldn't be any further, probably, and we might be worse off because AIDS would have continued to spread and people would not know what it is or understand it, and the fear would grow, and that would cause other problems to occur. And so you'd have this ripple outward effect that would be massive panic against people, whether they're gay or that you think that they did drugs or whatever. And that would bring with it all sorts of social unrest and real bad persecution of gays, which was already a thing going on in the 80s and in early 90s anyways, because there was just a fear about it. And a lot of religious things got on the bandwagon and was like, this is God punishing homosexuals. And, it's just a lot of misinformation. So if nothing else, the government had to do something to get the actual information out there. Again, maybe if they had done proper research on it, they could have made the point that too much money was put into it or something. But why bother making that argument? It's a past deal. It happened a long time ago. Who cares? It's over. Move on. Do something about how does the government spend money? How does it allocate money? Which is something that's a good topic. That's something that I would think a conservative would be concerned about, because the government doesn't know how to spend money. And I think that's evident. It's very crystal clear. There was this one thing I had listened to with, what's his name? Strobel, talking about how a bathroom made by a private company versus a bathroom made by the government. The government took like 3 years to get their thing together, and it was, quadruple what the, private contractor did, and because the government has all these giant hoops that they must jump through, that they put themselves in that bind of saying, this has to clear, and this has to be this way, and this must be that way, and they just make it more complicated for themselves. So, but that would have been a better topic to talk about. Government overspending, overreach. How they could direct money better. If you wanted to talk about government throwing money at research, well, hell, maybe government doesn't throw enough at research. That's actually a different argument completely, and you might think that would be odd if you were looking to make an argument for conserving of money, but actually it is an argument for conservation, because yes, you'll lose something on that research, but what you might gain outweighs that benefit. All the technology that was discovered because we went to space is a good example. So you could take the same argument and say, well, if, and people do this with like, well, if we took all the money that we throw at the military and threw it at NASA, we could get to Mars really fast. Well, that might be true, but it also might be true that we would get invaded. I don't know that anyone would, but, you could cut the budget, certainly, significantly. But then you also are affecting things in the military, and we already saw a whole bunch of bases closed during the Clinton years. And because the bases closed, that meant people had to be retired early for officers or kind of shifted around, pushed out, not promoted if they were, not officers, if they were enlisted. So and then the towns around those bases that required those bases to survive, that did better because those bases were active, hurt as a result. And so there's this ripple effect that you've got to think about, that you've got to put into your analysis of where to cut money. And of course, it did balance the budget temporarily, but it went right back to being unbalanced, once Clinton left, because all you did was cut funding in one place to pay a different thing. And, maybe there was other problems I'm not aware of, but that's what I remember from that time. But I was pretty young, so take that with a grain of salt. The fact is that AIDS, HIV is still a thing. It's still something that's out there, but there are treatments for it, whereas before there weren't any. That, like, getting it was like almost a death sentence now. Although getting it's not something you want to do, it's not a pure death sentence because of the research that was put into it, because of the funding that was thrown at it. So, is Crowder, homophobia, whatever? Maybe, I don't know. Probably, or is he pandering to certain pieces of his audience? I have no idea. Hopefully, someone will tell him, look, you're gonna, this is not the fight to fight. This is not the way to go about it, because you're this is gonna get you, taken down and get rid of all the good work you've done so far. So, say, look, we didn't do very good research on it, and we retract it. You don't have to necessarily apologize, although, that might help some people. I don't know. Other people, not so much. But just at least say, we retract the idea that it was a hoax. We did bad data looking at it, blah, somebody got fired, whatever. And there you go. And then just move forward from there. Will he do that? Probably not. Does he deserve to be shut down? No. I hate the whole idea of anyone getting shut down on YouTube or wherever else. That shouldn't, like, unless you upload porn, like, who cares? It should be that, maybe. But that's not how these things work. But I don't like that the political ideologies are taking precedent rather than, let's have a good community guideline, and that's what's taking precedent. And so as a result, people are getting, banned or flagged or whatever for things that just are uneven-handed. So I think that that's troubling in general. But it doesn't make Chowderhead a good guy, obviously. You can hate the guy, attack the argument. He didn't have one, but, just put out the good data and put out the good information out there. Unlike what he did, because he's a Chowderhead. He made logical fallacies because he didn't do the research on it. So learn logic. The Hitler mustache fallacy. Yeah, well, yes, that's a different one. That's not even really a fallacy either, per se. But, Hitler has a mustache. You have a mustache, therefore you're like Hitler. Yeah, it's kind of that's an association sort of fallacies thing. I don't know if you could combine the Michael Jordan thing into that as a fallacy. But okay, so that's really all I had. I can't cover everything he said and all the fallacies. I just really wanted to nail down the one that stuck out to me, which is like, oh, if the government had done this instead of this, then something else is like, look, if things were different, things would be different. So what? What's your argument? That's not very good. You You'd have to show that that would be the case. Yes, they would be different, granted, but where's your thing to show in what way things would have unfolded? It's pure speculation at that point. And you're really hurting yourself and other people by saying that this thing was a hoax when it wasn't. It was a big deal. It still is a problem that's out there, and thankfully it's not that big of a deal because people are educated on this and because there's treatments for it, and all of that is thanks to the funding, which is exactly what he argued against. Stupid nitwit. Come on, Crowder, do better next time. As for me, whenever I make bad arguments, that doesn't count because, anyways. So thanks for watching, and comment or don't, whatever you want to do. If you want like a full proper analysis of this, I guess I could do that. Let me know if that's what you want to see. If not, then this was the thing I did. Goodbye.